Society is twisting your mind, and you're probably not even aware of it. Let's talk about negative social conditioning. Now, you might have heard us talk about this term before, but let's take a moment here to really break it down. What is negative social conditioning? What does that mean? And more importantly, how can we actually break free from its influence so we can become our healthiest, most successful selves? Now, when we use that term, negative social conditioning, what I'm really talking about here is the process by which people are taught, either directly or indirectly, to conform to certain social norms and certain expectations that discourage you from acting in certain ways that would actually benefit you. Now, whenever this topic comes up, somebody in the audience will, if I'm teaching this live, they'll say, where does it come from? Where does negative social conditioning come from? Is there like some cabal of mustache twirling villains in a room somewhere like the Illuminati that are all conspiring to keep people down, keep the masses down? Like, we're going to instill this value and this value and this value in them. We're going to socially condition them in this way to keep ourselves in power. Or is it something that just sort of happens as a natural outgrowth of society? Well, there's varying opinions. And look, it might be a little column A, a little column B, but I posit that yeah, it's true. There are some people in positions of power that benefit from social conditioning, but ultimately it's sort of what my buddy Owen would call a headless chicken. In other words, the system ultimately operates on its own. It's not controlled by any one person or group. Rather, the system is a self-perpetuating entity that is driven by its own internal logic and goals. And of course, this all started back in the 18th century with the Industrial Revolution. And Industrial Revolution, it basically introduced a completely new way of thinking to humanity that emphasized rationality above everything else. And look, rationality, empiricism has given us some amazing things. However, it's not always good. Just look at the term rationalization. That's what? That's a pejorative term that we use to justify faulty reasoning or self-deceit that causes us to do dumb shit. So it's not always necessarily a good thing. And ultimately, the current social conditioning that we experience today, it's a product of this way of thinking. And this is characterized by a constant pursuit of progress, a constant pursuit of efficiency and control. The system of production and consumption that underpins modern society, it has to regulate our behavior very, very closely if it's going to continue functioning. And this regulation of human behavior, it's necessary because the system is designed to operate with utmost efficiency. And any deviation from the norm can disrupt this efficiency and fuck up the system. So negative conditioning, it basically ensures that individuals conform to the norms and values of the system, and any deviation from these norms whatsoever can be seen as a threat to the system's stability. Now, as I said a moment ago, the system that we live in, it's not controlled by just one person or just one group, but there are in fact undeniably powerful interests that benefit from it and actually work to keep it in power as a result of that. And of course, these interests can range from politicians to business leaders to various academics or intellectuals who promote the system's values in order to keep themselves in power and maintain their own influence. But of course, the system, it's also kept going by the cultural and psychological structures of modern society, which encourage us to follow the norm and discourage us from questioning it to an extreme degree. And these structures and systems include things like the educational system, the media, and I dare say consumer culture itself. And all of these things reinforce the system's values and create this sense of unwavering obedience among us. Our ability to connect with other people in a charismatic way can actually be impacted heavily by negative social conditioning. It's like, you don't say, Jeff. What? Really? Like I said, these conditionings aren't designed to benefit you personally and can cause you to act against your own interests. So these can include being taught to hide your emotions or to prioritize fitting in over expressing yourself authentically. Negative social conditioning can also cause you to doubt yourself and have low self-esteem, which of course makes it very hard for you to confidently share your thoughts, feelings, accomplishments, personality with other people. Now, oddly enough, most of these so-called social conditionings happen to line up with the characteristic behaviors of an addict. And that's something that's very interesting to think about, because when we say negative social conditioning, it's generally thrown out there as this blanket term, but we don't really get into, okay, what are the conditionings? So, and again, if you look at them, they're the same behaviors that an addict exhibits. Addiction doesn't just affect individuals, but it can affect entire systems and societies. Our modern society today very clearly exhibits addictive behaviors, such as emphasis on material possessions, obsession with productivity, focus on instant gratification. Technology, and in particular social media, have also contributed to our need for constant, never-ending stimulation and validation. So having said that, I want to take a look here at a couple of common negative social conditioning patterns, so to speak, and how they can affect us in our relationships and interactions with others. So let's pin a couple of these down here. What are some of these negative social conditionings? The first one I want to talk about today is black and white thinking, because this could also be called dualism. So this is this idea that the world is divided into opposing forces or opposites, right? Good and evil, us versus them, right or wrong, on or off, up or down, left or right. And there's no in between. It's either A or B, direct or indirect, high energy or low energy, playful or serious, discipline and freedom, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, this kind of thinking has led to many harmful consequences, not just for individuals, but for society as a whole. For example, when you see yourself as separate from the environment, you can end up trying to exploit it instead of living in harmony with it. And sadly, this sense of disconnection, it can also lead to violence and many other destructive behaviors. Dualism, again, this black and white thinking, it can lead to a sense of competition and division between people, which can lead to misunderstandings, it can lead to conflict. And ultimately, it's essential that you start to recognize this way of thinking and start to look at things with a more nuanced view. I know it's hard, okay? You got to look at it with a nuanced view that values collaboration and cooperation over competition and separation. You know, very often I see people in the environment on my live programs, and they don't look like they even belong there. They look so separate from the environment because, again, they're like, it's me and them. It's not, I'm a part of this environment. And so when they go to, like, say, introduce themselves to somebody, it's a very competitive approach, right? They're like, if I don't crack the set, if they don't accept me and like buoy my emotional state up by, receiving my introduction well, I'm a loser. I failed. My night is worse. And so again, what this does, this lends their approach, this sort of air of neediness and desperation, which of course makes it more likely to not be well received, versus not thinking in this like me versus them sort of mentality, this dualistic mentality, thinking in a more collaborative way. Like, I'm in the environment here, I'm part of the environment, I'm moving to the beat of the, say in a nightlife environment, I'm moving to the beat of the music, I'm walking around, I'm enjoying myself, and I'm just going to collaborate. I'm going to, again, enjoy myself in the environment, introduce myself to somebody, invite them to meet me in the middle and join me in collaborating and creating a good time. And that tends to get a much better reaction because it's not needy. Next up, let's talk about the granddaddy of all social conditionings, judgmentalism. Now, judgmentalism refers to the tendency of people to evaluate and criticize others, but perhaps more importantly, to evaluate and criticize ourselves. Society's addiction to external validation and social comparison, it leads to judgmentalism, where, again, we're conditioned to view ourselves through this lens of comparison and evaluation. And this can lead to a very self-critical and often even punitive attitude towards yourself and towards other people, which ultimately results, again, in low self-esteem, social anxiety, and conflict. There's a huge tendency to judge other people and actually seek out judgment by others based on our appearance, our socioeconomic status, any other external factors that you can think of. And this has created a culture of isolation and disconnection where we're feeling like we've got to constantly prove our worth or conform to these societal norms to be accepted. And this culture of judgmentalism, it leads to a sense of powerlessness and ultimately hopelessness, which can also contribute to addictive behaviors as a way of coping with these negative feelings, such as substance abuse. Look how many people, they can't even go to a bar and hang out. They can't even go to any sort of party or nightlife environment. First thing they do, straight to the bar. straight to the bar to pour some poison on their brain so they can cope with these feelings of hopelessness. So to overcome judgmentalism, practice empathy and compassion towards others, but perhaps more importantly, practice it towards yourself. You can't get better and grow unless you accept yourself as you are right now. Another social conditioning is abdication of responsibility and blame. And this is related to the habit of pointing fingers to other people when we encounter problems. It's much, much easier to blame external factors, right? Like, oh, they're not supporting me at work, or these people are victimizing me, or, the dating scene is so hypergamy, this, that, look, it's very easy to blame these external factors rather than to take responsibility for your own actions or circumstances. After all, if you're the one responsible, then your shitty outcomes are your fault, right? Can't have that. However, this behavior ultimately creates a culture of victimhood where you feel even more helpless to make changes in your life. Unfortunately, this again often leads to addictive behaviors as we try to numb the pain of feeling powerless. Society's obsession with immediate gratification has made us prioritize pleasure and comfort over personal responsibility. And this leads to a lack of accountability, avoidance of tough situations, and just a general disregard for the consequences of our actions. So to overcome this, it's important that you should strive to take personal responsibility for your actions and circumstances. This is one of the, again, if you've seen my other video, I'll link to it here. My review of Nathaniel Brandon's 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. Taking self-responsibility is one of the pillars of self-esteem that's going to help you to have a sense of control over your life. It's going to help you to understand the value proposition. Why should people want to talk to you? Why should people want to associate with you? Why should people want to become your client? It all starts with, again, among other things, taking responsibility, right? This means recognizing that we have the power to change our lives, even when things don't go the way we planned. And by doing this, we can break free from that culture of victimhood and start taking control of our lives. Another big social conditioning is defensiveness. This is one I see all the time in my work as a coach. And this is basically when people react defensively or are highly resistant to feedback rather than engaging in open communication and taking responsibility. So this defensiveness tendency, it creates this culture where people feel the need to protect their own image or protect their own reputation above all else. And, this is why on my programs, I stopped kind of framing things as criticism, and I say, okay, I'm going to give descriptive observation. Like, I notice you're doing this. I notice you're making a choice to speak to these people in this way. In my experience, this tends to get a better result. You may wish to try this. I'd encourage you to try this, as opposed to what you're doing is wrong. And particularly with socializing, it's so prone to defensiveness because it's so results oriented. And it's tied up with a lot of stuff about self-worth, reproduction, blah, 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 blah. And so it's really easy to get defensive when someone's giving you feedback about that, about your communication style and how you're socializing with people. But to overcome defensiveness, it's very important to cultivate self-awareness and start to at least think about becoming more open to feedback. Which again, is why I like to couch it as descriptions. Another negative social conditioning is negativity itself. And this is another major issue that we face in our society. We're addicted to drama. So we'll often focus on problems and conflicts instead of solutions and positive outcomes. And this can lead to ultimately a very pessimistic view of life and ultimately lead to more conflict. This negativity, it creates this kind of culture of constant anxiety where we now feel that we have to protect ourselves from potential harm or danger. So again, to combat this particular negative social conditioning, you've got to start to cultivate a sense of optimism about the future and recognize the potential for growth even when circumstances aren't great. Next up, we've got frozen feelings. And frozen feelings happen when we try to ignore or deny our emotions, leading to a sense of disconnection or numbness. And frozen feelings is a massive one that I see all the time. If you think about it, from a very young age, we're taught to be exceedingly careful with our uses of emotional energy. You're taught, don't be loud, don't run around in the public place, sit down, shut up. So ultimately what happens is, as soon as the desire to express an emotion is felt, the impulse to control it and tamp it down pops up right away. In fact, these two events may as well be the same event insofar as the relationship in time is concerned. Impulse to express comes up, impulse to shut it down pops right up and tamps it down and shoves it down inside of you so you don't express it. Now, of course, that emotional energy, yeah, it's not expressed, but it doesn't go anywhere either. It's perhaps transformed into something maybe more destructive. And again, this can lead to this sense ultimately over time. First of all, it leads to a sense that at least what I call the expression repression error, where you feel that the repression of emotion is its expression. And over time, this can lead to a sense of disconnection or sort of sense of numbness in your life. To combat this, you've got to start to cultivate awareness and expressiveness. And this is probably the main focus of my mentoring program, really. Well, one of the fundamental tenets is this idea of awareness. Because think about it, you've probably been repressing your emotions for so long. You've been, again, viewing these interference and control patterns as useful and necessary for so long that they are now below your threshold of awareness. You're not even aware that you're doing it. So again, a lot of the exercises that we do over those 8 weeks in the mentoring program are designed to put additional demands upon your face, your voice, your body, your emotional process, your intuition. So as those demands increase, the impulse to shut them down increases as well. That's magnified as well. And in that process of magnification, okay, you can become aware of it. And at that point, you're not this helpless victim of your history anymore. Now you can start to release them and replace their manifestations in your life. You can say, this helped me and protected me at one point. It's not helping me now. It's not in my best interests to act in this way. It's preventing me from connecting with other people. It's preventing me from being outgoing, expansive, funny, cool, making people like me, making people want to talk to me. Let's get rid of that. All right. And that it all starts with awareness. Next negative social conditioning is dishonesty. And dishonesty is when we aren't truthful with ourselves or other people, leading to a sense of inauthenticity. And there's 3 levels of dishonesty that are really common in society. Number 1, you've got overt dishonesty, and this is where we deliberately lie to other people to protect our own interests or reputation. Number 2 is covert dishonesty, when we hide our true thoughts and feelings to conform to those social norms. And then unconscious dishonesty, perhaps the most insidious of all, is when we're not aware of our own thoughts or feelings, causing the sense of disconnection. So to develop a sense of self-awareness and a more authentic and genuine sense of self, you got to be honest with yourself. When you're honest with yourself, you can build deeper and more meaningful relationships based on trust and mutual respect. Next up, we have confusion. Now, confusion, what is that? Well, confusion means you feel uncertain, you feel unsure, you're sort of disoriented. And believe it or not, society wants you to remain confused. When you're confused, it can lead to anxiety, a sense of like disconnection from reality. And again, sadly, our society today is plagued by indecisiveness and avoidance as people are constantly seeking out more information before taking action or making a choice. You might be one of these people. You just watch all these damn videos, but you don't go out and meet people. You don't go out and interact with people. Right? Because I need more information. This guy's saying this guy's saying that. In fact, maybe Jeffy said this in one video, and then he said this in another video. Maybe he said this at the beginning of the video, and then he said this at the end of the video. What does it all mean? What does it all mean? Of course, this sense of disorientation and confusion can lead to, again, addiction as people try to numb the pain of feeling overwhelmed and powerless. So to beat confusion, you have to cultivate clarity and you have to cultivate focus. What does this mean? This means setting clear goals and clear priorities, right? And look, it's important to recognize confusion can be used as a tool of control by those in power, right? Bureaucratic systems, for example, these Kafkaesque Byzantine structures can create confusion and make it really hard for people to understand what their rights are, what their responsibilities are. Meanwhile, media and advertising can bombard us with all these conflicting messages, making it very difficult to know what's really important or really true. By creating a culture of confusion, people in power can maintain their control. Nobody is more controllable than a confused person. because they spend all their energy trying to figure out what's going on, and this doesn't leave a lot of energy left over for actually taking action. Now, I've listed, these are just, by no means should you consider this a comprehensive list of social conditionings, but I think those are kind of the big ones off the top of my head just for this video. I mean, I could literally, do a 2-hour video on this. I respect your time here though. But you got to understand the various conditioning factors of society, they're interrelated. They have this symbiotic relationship. They often reinforce one another, creating this complex web of negative consequences. In other words, the whole is worse than the sum of the parts. Every one of these conditioning factors I talked about here contribute to a larger cultural paradigm that promotes addictive behavior, promotes social disconnection in favor of efficiency, rationalization, and again, the system. So to give some examples of these the interconnected nature of these, the culture of negativism can reinforce the tendency toward judgmentalism as you become focused on the negative aspects of yourself and other people. This can lead to a lack of appreciation or gratitude. Furthermore, the tendency towards frozen feelings can contribute to a culture of confusion, where people feel disconnected from their emotions and they struggle to figure out what the hell is important, what the hell is true. And this confusion can then go on to reinforce the tendency toward judgmentalism as people struggle to understand all of these, complex issues and become defensive or dismissive of other people's views. And this can then lead to lack of empathy, further contributing to, this social disconnect. To overcome negative social conditioning, you got to challenge the beliefs and assumptions that limit your self-expression and connection with others. So here are a couple ways that you can start to become aware of and ultimately free yourself from negative social conditioning so you can start to express yourself more freely, make strong connections, and ultimately become a more charismatic person. Number 1, self-awareness or self-reflection. Take time, like literally take a little bit of time every day to reflect on your thoughts, your beliefs, your attitudes. Right? Be curious about how these attitudes and beliefs may have been shaped by the environment, and try to identify which of your beliefs are currently serving you and which ones might be holding you back. Number 2, look for new experiences. This means being intellectually curious, going out and exposing yourself to new ideas, new people, new situations. This can help you to challenge your existing beliefs and expand your perspective. In fact, I'd say that traveling around the world multiple times was probably one of the best things that I ever did in terms of, allowing me to break free from negative social conditioning. Number 3, build self-awareness. This is a lot like number 1, but again, we're even going deeper here. We're talking about paying attention to how your emotions work, paying attention to how your mind works, paying attention to how your body sensations work, and how you react to a variety of different situations. This can help you to identify certain patterns of behavior, like I said, that might be below your threshold of awareness and are limiting you from communicating charismatically and expressing yourself. Again, probably the number 1 tenet of everything that I do, all of my work revolves around developing more, it's like awareness. Number 4, practice self-compassion. Maybe engage in meditation. Again, avoid ruthless self-criticism. Again, recognize everyone is privy to everyone has been conditioned by these things. Everyone has been affected by negative social conditioning. It's part of the human condition, right? It's going to take time. It's going to take effort to overcome it. You're not going to be able to, you got to persist. You're not going to drop these conditionings and become expressively free in every way that you can because intellectually understand it would be beneficial for you to do so. Next, explore personal values and purpose. Now, I could go into a lot of depth on this, on the difference between goals and purpose, but just in a nutshell here, take some time to identify your personal values and, resolve to embody those every day, even when you don't necessarily feel like it. Find ways to align your actions and behaviors with those values every single day. Again, this will guide you from a higher perspective. This can help you create a sense of purpose and meaning in your life, which is, again, one of the pillars of self-esteem. And finally, look for support. If you're struggling to overcome negative social conditioning that's keeping you in this little box and you can't express yourself, seek out the help of, a coach or a mentor who can help you navigate all this. If you're ready to take your charisma and your communication skills and your expressivity to the next level, I invite you to join my live bootcamp programs or my 8-week charisma mentoring. By joining these programs, you'll become part of a dedicated mastermind group, and you're gonna get my personalized guidance and my support to help accelerate your progress in this area. Again, I've been doing this for 20 years very, very successfully. Both of these programs, the bootcamp and the mentoring, have helped countless people just like you improve their relationships, have more confidence, advance their careers, and ultimately have a more fulfilling and purpose-driven life. So unlock your potential, become the charismatic person you always wanted to be. Hit the link in the description below to learn more about my 8-week charisma mentoring program and start your transformation today. This has been Jeffy, and I'll see you next time. Jeffy.